Hello and welcome. I am Socrates, and today I would like to talk to you about something that hits me pretty hard, and that is propaganda and conspiracies. Give me 1 second and we will begin. All right. First of all, let's see what a propaganda is. Propaganda, noun, information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person, group, movement, institution, nation, etc. Two, the deliberate spreading of such information, rumors, etc. Three, the particular doctrine or principles propagated by an organization or movement. Okay, let's look at a couple synonyms. This one kind of struck me. Disinformation, hype, indoctrination, advertising. Boy, that one, I had to stop for a second and think about that. Doctrine, brainwashing, right? Hogwash, implantation, inculcation, newspeak, promotion, promulgation, proselytism, publication. So that, especially the advertising thing kind of gets me. It just goes to show in the past we have been led astray by many an advertisement. I can give tons of examples, which I will do in a minute. Let me move on to the definition of conspiracy before I go into all of the data. Okay, conspiracy, a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. A conspiracy to destroy the government. Plot, scheme, plan, ploy. Interesting. Let's look at a couple synonyms for conspiracy. Plot, scheme, sedition, treason, cabal, confederacy, connivance, countermine, counterplot, intrigue, machination, treachery, put up job, treacherousness. So it seems propaganda and conspiracy share a lot of similarities. And I notice that these two words are used and abused on a regular basis. And that's the reason I want to talk about this. Pardon me. So we are always told what is propaganda by news sources. Now they're starting this whole thing of fake news, and they're trying to decide for us what is real news and what is false news. I've done a video on how they have false news, and they've been busted doing false news reports. Anyone can look that up if you want to. But I want to go into a few examples of things that we were told were propaganda, things that we were told were conspiracies. And they were full of shit, and they were proven wrong. And there are many of them, and the scale of them is huge. So anyone who thinks that the government won't lie to you, let this stuff that I'm about to tell you sink in. Back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, they had a real problem with leaded gasoline, and the people were getting lead poisoning left and right. Crazy as a Mad Hatter. A Hatter used to work with lead, and it would absorb it through his skin, and he'd become crazy. Crazy as a Mad Hatter. Some say that it brought down Rome. The Empire of Rome fell because they made wine in leaded pots and pumped water into their city with leaded pipes, and it drove them all crazy. And we had leaded gasoline, and when we burnt the gasoline through our cars, which used to just guzzle gas like a motherfucker back in the day, all the cars did. And the lead was the byproduct of the car burning its leaded gasoline. And it would cover the ground, it got into the rain, it got into the water supply, and people were being born with deformities and all sorts of crazy stuff, and people were going crazy from it, and it was a really big issue, and they had to fight for over a decade just to convince people of the dangers of lead, even though the numbers clearly showed. This is why I have an issue with today and the whole climate change thing and the carbon, because there's data going both ways, and I really don't know what to think about that right now. And that and many other things that we're told on the regular is the reason I want to make this video and talk about this. Let me read a little bit of this here. Lead is one of the most intensely studied hazardous agents of the 20th century. The more toxicologists and other researchers investigated the health effects of lead, the more they realized that even very low levels of lead exposure were hazardous. The most common biomarker of lead exposure is the blood lead level, usually measured in micrograms, 1/110th of a liter of blood. For example, many regulatory agencies set 40 as a level of concern for adult male workers. Typically at this level, workers would be removed from the environment while responsible for the exposure, and ideally some determination would be made as to the cause of the exposure. The blood level of concern for children was dropped steadily as shown in the graph, and some believe that there is sufficient data on the health effects below 10, I forget what it is, that the CDC should significantly lower the blood lead level. That was in 2006. So they fought for a couple decades to finally get it made illegal, and then they banned lead in paint and all sorts of things because people were getting poisoned constantly. There's a whole documentary on it. I forget what it's called right now, but just look it up. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix, and it talks all about the dude that spent his life like fucking fighting them in court and shit, and them and their propaganda to belittle him and ostracize him and make him seem like he didn't know what he was talking about. And in the end, we find out he was 100% right, and they had to change their tune. But over time, that's gone down since we banned it. Cigarettes is another great example of propaganda in advertising and commercialism. When cigarettes back in the day, they used to be advertised as a health product. And here are some examples of how they used to advertise it. A doctor smoking Camels. I'm going to grow to be 100 years old. Smoking some Camels. I doubt it. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. 20,000 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. Wow. As your dentist, I would recommend Viceroys. Wow. Even dentists are in this, huh? Digestion's sake, smoke Camels. Oh, it's good for the GI tract too. Who would have thought? There's another one, digestives, huh? Here's when my throat says switch to Spud Imperials. My dad died 2 years ago from throat cancer from smoking his whole life. This is really sad to see this one especially. But it just goes on and on and on. Oh, here it's a weight loss thing. It's just a miracle product. It can do it all. It's such bullshit. They crammed it down our throats as it being a health thing. They lobbied and bribed the Food and Drug Administration. They are completely lobbied and sold out. And I'll show more examples of that, but cigarettes is the big one. I forget what the death toll is, but it's crazy how many people die every year from smoking related issues. Thankfully, hopefully this new phase of smoking, I forget what it's called, vaping, hopefully that is way less harmful, and we don't find out that there's some kind of crazy side effects from that. Although I have heard about this thing called popcorn lung that it can give you. I don't know if that's true or what. I haven't looked into it yet. But big pharma is another big one. A huge amount of people die every year from different painkillers and whatnot. The big pharma wants doctors to prescribe, and they've lobbied, and the Food and Drug Administration, who's supposed to protect us from this bullcrap, cigarettes and all this kind of stuff, or at least give us an honest view of what they are. When lobbied, they'll put a stamp of approval and safety stamp on pretty much anything. It seems they can be paid off to do just about anything. I'm just going to read a little bit of this to give you some bearing on what I mean here. FDA's own scientists report pattern of intimidation, censorship, and scientific fraud that undermines public safety. It is truly astonishing survey just released by the Union of Concerned Scientists. The Food and Drug Administration's own scientists describe the agency as an environment of intimidation, censorship, and scientific fraud. A survey of 997 FDA scientists revealed that 40% feared retaliation for voicing safety concerns over prescription drugs in public. Over 1/3 of the scientists didn't even feel safe expressing safety concerns inside the agency behind closed doors. Intimidation and censorship have been well documented by the FDA, and this survey adds further weight to the evidence that the FDA has been utterly co-opted by the pharmaceutical industry and now serves big pharma's commercial interests rather than anything resembling a commitment to honest science or public safety. Time and time again, it has been the courageous actions of independent FDA scientists taking a stand despite intense intimidation and censorship from the agency's top officials who have warned U.S. public about dangerous prescription drugs like Vioxx. Literally tens of millions of Americans have been harmed by FDA negligence over the last decade, and well over 1 million have been killed by FDA-approved prescription drugs, many of which were approved based on fraudulent scientific data the FDA conveniently chose to overlook. Through its abandonment of public safety and scientific integrity, the FDA has now become the single greatest threat to the health and safety of the American people, dwarfing any threat posed by terrorists. And that's the truth. That is the truth. More people die every year than probably all the terrorists, easily in the last 10 years. The terrorist acts. I'm sure maybe not the war put together. I don't know. But I beat that. It really bugs me this year. They've completely sold out. I heard a story from China and the FDA equivalent in China. He was warned not to take any bribes, not to lobby, and he got caught taking a bribe and he was publicly executed. And I'm not saying that's what needs to happen to ours, but obviously these departments have become completely inept. If they're supposed to protect the public safety, they are completely inept because they are not doing that. They have sold out. They have taken bribes. We have legal bribery in this country. It's called lobbying. If they called it bribery, maybe people would have a problem with it. But when they hear the word lobby, they don't think that. I know I didn't know what the fuck that meant. For 30 fucking years, I didn't know what that meant. So, I get it. But once we know, it really stings. The question is, what do we do? Here's another story. How the FDA, Big Pharma, and doctors cause injury for profit. They basically collude. I'm not going to go into all this here, but the bottom line is that they have colluded to make money and not do their fucking jobs. And they've been successful at it. They're not going to stop now. We have to take their fucking jobs away because they won't stop. They can't stop. I don't know what system is set up to where, we might as well be in a feudal society if we have no protections, none of the agencies, the DEA is corrupt, the CIA has been corrupt and been proven wrong a million times. There was a big conspiracy about how they were importing drugs and guns and all this bullshit, and they kept saying it wasn't true, and then they got caught over and over and over again. One time they crashed a fucking plane full of cocaine and got caught, and there's pictures of it leaked everywhere. They've done tons of stuff. Every single one of our agencies is basically corrupt. And what do we do about it? That's what I don't know. But I feel like knowing is half the battle, and knowledge is the first fucking step. And that's what I'm trying to do, is tell people what I know. And I want everyone else to tell me what they know. Maybe together we can fucking do something about all this bullshit. I'll get to this one last. Marijuana is another great example of propaganda and conspiracy against it. The idea that there was a conspiracy against marijuana is 100% proven true now. Lobbyists for alcohol, tobacco, and big pharma have been caught making propaganda against marijuana. Marijuana has been used for over 6,000 years. They found it in Egyptian tombs. No one has ever died from it, and yet it's illegal in a whole bunch of states. Yet I just read to you, millions of people die from big pharma, and that's perfectly legal. As a matter of fact, it's pushed. And alcohol, tobacco, and big pharma colluding to keep weed illegal is a conspiracy. They are conspiring to keep it illegal and have been caught doing so. I believe it was what was called Partnership for a Drug-Free America. I don't know if you remember these commercials that used to air. And there's like somebody sitting on a couch and the dog wants to go for a walk. It's all like cartoon. And they're like, oh, but weed makes you, lazy and it ruins your life. And well, at least that number one, that's not true. And number two, well, at least you have a life and you're not dead from big pharma drugs. And, isn't that very telling that alcohol, tobacco, and big pharma would collude to keep marijuana illegal? That's because it would replace basically all three of them. And for free, you can grow it for free. So of course they want to collude to get rid of that. But I'll just read you a little bit of this so you can get a little bearing on exactly how it works. The Crusaders Against Weed constitute a long list of suspiciously self-interested folks. Lobbyists work hard to secure for police departments millions of dollars in federal grants towards eradicating weed. Pharmaceutical companies compensate leading anti-marijuana researchers in order to keep their customers on painkillers over cannabis, which has been used, like I said, for over 6,000 years as a painkiller, natural, which is cheaper. The prison industrial complex would like to keep making money on building more prisons to fill with non-violent grass smokers. That is also true. There's another way that they've learned to make money on it. They've a culture of criminals for people who are just do the thing that people have been doing for thousands of years. They made a law that says, oh, what you've been doing for thousands of years, people, now it's illegal. So now we can lock you up and we can take money from you forever. If that don't sound like bullshit to you guys, I don't know what else to say. The alcohol and beer industries have also lobbied for years to keep marijuana illegal because they fear the competition that legalized weed would bring. Howard Wooldridge, at the anti-drug war activist and retired cop, told the online publication, marijuana and alcohol compete right today as a product to take the edge off the day at 6 o'clock. According to the Pew Research Center, the majority of Americans support legalizing marijuana, which is true. Every time they do a study, they find out it's not harmful. And every time they do a poll, they find out that most people are completely fine with it. I heard some statistic to 70-80% of the population smokes it, and they all do just fine every single day, morning to night. They're not drinking liquid courage or fucking smoking angel dust I really can't wrap my brain around why it is so persecuted. It's unbelievable. Every time you ban something, you make a new class of criminal. There's a famous quote that says something like, laws are like spider webs, and they let wasps and spiders go free, but catch the flies. It's like the people who make the laws and all the most devious, evil people get to work around the laws and make, billions of dollars. And meanwhile, the regular people get caught up in this fucking web and they never escape. And, many Latin American countries have recently legalized all drugs to try to take away power from the cartels, because the cartels are just hemming shit up. Everyone knows that. And it's just the same as when there was a prohibition on alcohol back in the day. It is what made the mafia what it is today. And later they stopped selling alcohol when it became illegal, and they got into the insurance racket. And here we are 100 years later, and they're still hemming shit up with insurance that we all have to pay for. They found a way. It's called racketeering. They found a way to racketeer us from our homes, even if we don't own businesses. Way better than the racket they had going before. Just, hey, let me pay me for protection. Something bad will happen to you. They just up their game a little bit, and it's been successful ever since. I don't know if many of you remember, in 2008, we had a big economic fallout, and we had to bail out the banks. We were told they were too big to fail, and if the banks fail, America would fail. Really, if a company is spending stupidly and making poor practices, they don't give a fuck about our businesses if they fucking failed. Well, I don't give a fuck if these banks fail. But just so you know, the national debt, I was curious recently, and I was like, who the fuck do we owe? Who do we owe in the national debt? Well, I think I found out how it works. So the banks in America who we bailed out are who we owe through the national debt. Before Obama, each individual owed the equivalent of $30,000 each American, right? And now it's almost $62,000 after Obama's thing. He spent the most of any president ever. And so even our children, $62,000 a piece to pay off the national debt. But who does it go to? Well, it actually goes to the banks here in America. I always heard that we owed China and shit. We owed China, and China would own us, and we owe them all this money. It's the fucking banks that we own. When we take out a loan, it's from a bank. They don't give us real money, but we pay them real money when we make our payments. When they give us our loan, it's just blips on a keyboard. There's no money exchange. And so all the loans that happen from businesses and all sorts of things are from these fucking banks. And these banks, some of them are national, some of them are global. And that is who we owe. We owe the people that own the banks. There's some fat cats sitting around somewhere that we owe trillions of dollars, what the national debt is. Trillions of dollars. And yet we paid to make sure that they didn't fail. Fuck them. What makes them owners of this fucking world? Why do they inherit the world and we have to pay them to live in it? I don't fucking understand it. If I'm missing anything, please let me know. I'm always willing to absorb new information. I always feel like the difference between two people have a disagreement. I feel like, I don't remember where I heard this from, but this isn't my original thought here, that one person just has a little bit more information than the other person. It's not that they're necessarily wrong. They're right with the information that they have. It's just that the other person who has the difference of opinion might have one more piece of information, and that could make his decision go the other way. And I think that's a pretty good explanation of sort of how we reason out and critically examine our world and our data. And that is what this video is all about. How do we find out? There's a little bit more on the national debt here. And I forget what the current thing, I don't know what the date of this thing is here, but we owe it's something like 13 trillion or 17 trillion dollars. I don't know how old this one is here, but I just heard this a couple days ago. And that isn't even all of the debt that we owe. We actually Oh, a whole lot more, but they don't normally talk about it. Yeah, here it is. This is a report here from Fox News, which I don't normally watch, but it is a pretty interesting video on exactly how it works here. And let's take a minute here and listen to what they say. I'll just play part of it. It's only a minute long.
Stephen Moore, author of The End of Prosperity, senior economic writer for the Wall Street Journal, is here. Stephen, I would like you to, if you can, explain this pie chart to America on our spending here, our money problems. Can you explain this?
Well, we have multiple national debts, Glenn. We don't just have one national debt. Everyone knows that we owe $8 to $10 trillion in the accumulated budget deficits that we owe, but then we also owe somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $55 trillion, and that's trillion with a T, in money that we owe in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, money that we don't have coming into the system. That is promises we made over what we're going to collect into the system. And then on top of that, Glenn, there's $16 billion that we calculated.
Trillion.
Did I say?
You said billion.
Even I'm guilty.
Hello, billion's a made-up word. Let's use
it. 16 trillion, and those are guarantees that we've made on everything from student loans to pensions to virtually every mortgage in America today is guaranteed payment by the federal government.
All right, now what?
So there's an interesting thing. When somebody files bankruptcy and they fail to pay for their house and their house falls apart, everyone else just pays for it. Everyone else in the country just pays for people's irresponsibilities. It's pretty fucking crazy. And altogether, I mean, if you add up those numbers, I don't know how old this is, but if you add up those numbers just right there, that's like $75 trillion or some shit. I mean, there is no way of paying that off. That's not a number that I don't know if anyone in the world has that much money. I mean, what the fuck? But it just doesn't end. We use this word conspiracy like, if you talk about things, we like to say in our modern vernacular, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, like it's not real or it couldn't possibly be real. But that's completely not true. And there are many examples. They conspired to kill John F. Kennedy, and they did. They conspired to kill Abraham Lincoln, and they did. There's been many conspiracies. They conspired to kill Martin Luther King Jr., and they did. So just because you hear the word conspiracy doesn't make it false. We have to sift through the information. We live in the information age, and more information is put on the internet every single day than in all of human history combined in the past. We gain more every day than all of human history together. We make discoveries on legendary scales now, on the daily, monumental discoveries and changes in science and in research all over the place. And I'm so happy to be born into the information age, because I'm an autodidact, and I love to examine and research things that interest me. And I can't help it. I want to learn everything in the fucking world. That's just my mentality. And so there's been many conspiracies that are true. They used to say that we had a stealth aircraft for decades, and the government denied it. And decades later, I think it was in the early 90s or late 80s, we find out that they indeed did have a stealth aircraft. Looks like a big boomerang sort of shape, a big V. And what's funny is a lot of like UFO sightings are in a big V, but some of these things are miles across. And I always wonder, hell, we didn't know we had a stealth fighter for a few decades. Imagine what we could have now. Imagine what the government could have right now. Probably anti-gravity. I mean, if you believe some of the released documentation from WikiLeaks, which I don't see any reason not to believe, everything else was proven fucking true. Through WikiLeaks, Julian Assange and Snowden released, and there are many documents talking about the government having a fleet of spacefaring ships and non-terrestrial people that aren't stationed on Earth. They live in space, and they're ship transfers and stuff like this. Crazy stuff that we can hardly wrap our brains around. But you know what? Stealth technology was hard to wrap our brains around before it was revealed. I mean, this last year, they figured out a way to make light solid light, like a force field. I forget which, I want to say MIT, but I'm not sure it was them. One of the big college researchers, and because light, they found out last year also that it existed as a particle, as a particle. Oh, fuck it, I'm sorry. It existed in two states at the same time, and so they found out that how to make it physically solid. And I don't know exactly how the fuck they do it, but that is extremely interesting to me. That is like the things of science fiction. In the future, we could have, force fields and shit. So we already have stealth technology. There are many technologies of bending light and that sort of thing for complete invisibility. The things that we once considered science fiction are now made discoveries all the time, and we have many roots to that same problem many times over all around the world. China is working on a type of invisibility, Japan as well. And I know America has theirs, exoskeleton suits. I mean, everything you can imagine. AI is a big one. Obviously we've been working with smartphones for a few years, and there's a few different kinds, Cortana and Siri. These are artificial intelligences. They're only going to get better. Many of the world's leading scientists, they think it's probably going to be a bad thing when we develop an AI smart enough to learn, and it's probably go straight Judgment Day like Terminator and shit. But who knows? But the government and its branches have continually misled us, continually ridiculed people and told them that they were full of shit. And meanwhile, these people were right. And I understand for maybe national security, some things can't be released. But, where is the line, I wonder? Like military secrets, that's one thing, right? But, there are many things that they could come clean about. It doesn't make any sense. The only motivation they have is greed, like the pharmaceutical, like the marijuana thing, like the examples I've given. It just basically comes down to greed. They're just so greedy that they don't want to give up money. And I'm sure they will fight for control if it's ever threatened. So I have no idea how to fight for future freedom from this kind of bullshit. Let me read to you a little bit of this article here. It's really interesting. He just goes through. I don't normally go to this InfoWars, but this is a pretty interesting article, and it's about conspiracy theories that are true and that have been proven true. And I'm just gonna read through them a little bit just to give you an example of the wide range of deception that is propagated in our ears and eyeballs. And many of you have probably heard of many of these things. So let me begin here. Conspiracy theory is a term that originally was a neutral descriptor for any claim of civil, criminal, or political conspiracy. However, it has come almost exclusively to refer to any fringe theory that explains a historical or current event as a result of a secret plot by conspirators of almost superhuman power and cunning. To conspire means to join in a secret agreement to do an unlawful or wrongful act, or to use such means to accomplish a lawful end. The term conspiracy theory is frequently used by scholars and in popular culture to identify secret military, banking, or political actions aimed at stealing power, money, or freedom from the people. Too many conspiracy theories are just human nature. Not all people in this world are honest, hardworking, and forthcoming about their intentions. Certainly, we can all agree on this. So how did the term conspiracy theory get grouped in with fiction, fantasy, and folklore? Maybe that's a conspiracy. Just kidding, or am I? Skeptics are important in achieving an objective view of reality. However, skepticism is not the same as reinforcing the official storyline. In fact, a conspiracy theory can be argued as an alternative to the official mainstream story of events. Therefore, when skeptics attempt to ridicule a conspiracy theory by using the official story as a means of proving the conspiracy wrong, in effect, they are just reinforcing the original mainstream view of history and actually not being skeptical. This is not skepticism. It is just a convenient way for the establishment view of things to be seen as a correct version all the time, every time. In fact, it is common for hit pieces or debunking articles to pick extremely fringe and not very populated conspiracy theories. This in turn makes all conspiracies on a subject matter look crazy. Skeptics Magazine and Popular Mechanics, among many others, did this with 9/11. They referred to less than 10% of the many different conspiracy theories about 9/11 and picked the less popular ones. In fact, they picked the fringe, highly improbable points that only a few people make. This was used as a final investigation for looking into conspiracy theories. Convenient, huh? Okay, I'm not going to read all this, but I want to read some of these conspiracy theories that have actually been proven that they did conspire to do this stuff, and it came out. This is from a long time ago. The Dreyfus Affair in the 1800s in France. Jewish artillery officer Alfred Dreyfus was wrongfully convicted of treason based on a false government documents and sentenced to life in prison. The French government did attempt to cover this up, but Dreyfus was eventually pardoned after the affair was made public, an act that is credited to writer Emile Zola. Jeez. 2. The Mafia. The secret crime society was virtually unknown in the 1960s when member Joe Valachi first revealed the society's secrets to law enforcement officials. What was known was that organized crime existed, but not that the extent of their control included working with the CIA, politicians, and the biggest businesses in the world. Oh my God. MK Ultra. In the 1950s and 70s, the CIA ran a mind control project aimed at finding a truth serum to use on communist spies. Test subjects were giving LSD and other drugs, often without consent, and some were tortured. At least one man, civilian biochemist Frank Olson, who was working for the government, died as a result of the experiments. The project was finally exposed after investigations by the Rockefeller Commission. It's really, really crazy. So they don't care if people are dying. And, recently through the Freedom of Information Act, they released millions of documents, and it has all sorts of stuff in there about even this mind control and like all sorts of really crazy shit that, when we heard this thing, it's been ridiculed for so long, we think it can't be true, but then when they reveal these documents and come to find out that after they told us that we shouldn't believe it and that it's bullshit, they continued to get results and have studies and make advancements and shit. And it's like, if it's fake, why are they pouring in so much time and money and effort? I mean, it leads credence to that it's not fake at all. I mean, it's been proven that it was real now. And just like I said, there are many things about, UFOs and whatnot. Believe what you want, but, every single day people, there's a camera in every pocket now, and it is pretty amazing, the world, trying to keep things under covers now that there's a camera in every pocket and people can prove it on video. Operation Mockingbird. Also in the 1950s to 70s, the CIA paid a number of well-known domestic and foreign journalists from big-name media outlets like Time, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CBS, and others to publish CIA propaganda. The CIA was reportedly funded at least one movie, the animation Animal Farm by George Orwell. The Church Committee finally exposed the activities in 1975. So for decades, they're using all popular media sources. And just think about it. Nowadays, it's probably way more prolific on a ridiculous scale. The Manhattan Project was the code name of a project conducted during World War II to develop the first atomic bomb. Supposedly that was bullshit, proved real. I'm gonna start going through here a little bit faster. Asbestos. Between 1930 and 1960, manufacturers did all they could to prevent a link between asbestos and respiratory disease, including cancer, becoming known so they could avoid prosecution. American workers had in fact sued the company and find out that they were lying the whole time. Watergate. I don't know if you ever heard of that. I believe it was Nixon selling nuclear secrets to I don't know who. But it was caught on tape. And see, that seeing is believing, right? And a picture's worth 1,000 words. So what is a video worth? And now, we all got video to prove it. The Tuskegee syphilis study. This shit breaks my heart, man. They gave it to, they gave, I think it was syphilis. Yeah, syphilis, obviously, to 400 poor African American men in 1932 to 72. That shit breaks my heart. That's so fucking evil, man. I mean, close to 200 of the men died from syphilis or related complications at the end of the study because they didn't even tell them that they had it, and then it got out of control and it can kill you. Operation Northwoods, American military leaders drafted plans to create public support for a war against Cuba. Everyone knows about this. To oust Fidel Castro from power, and they conspired and it worked. What's this? 1990 testimony of Neraya, I don't know, 15-year-old girl named Nera testified before the U.S. Congress that she had seen Iraqi soldiers pulling Kuwaiti babies from incubators, causing them to die. The testimony helped gain major public support for the 91 Gulf War, but despite protests that the dispute of this story was itself a conspiracy theory, it was later discovered that the testimony was false. The public relations from Hill and Knowlton, which was an employee of the Citizens for a Free Kuwait, had arranged the testimony. It turned out that she had taking acting lessons on request of the CIA and was actually the niece of a major politician in Kuwait, was later disclosed to be Naraya al-Sabah, daughter of Saud bin Nasser al-Saban. Jeez, these names. Kuwaiti ambassador of the USA. Look at this, man. Wow. I have no basis for assuming that her story is not true, but the point goes beyond that. If one hypothesizes that the woman's story is fictitious from A to Z, that in no way diminishes the avalanche of human rights violations. Nevertheless, the senior Republican on the Human Rights Caucus, John Edward Porter, responded to the revelations by saying that if he had known that the girl was ambassador's daughter, he would not have allowed her to testify. I mean, it's just amazing. Look how much it comes back to the different branches of our own government that we're supposed to fucking trust. Like if they're not working, it's American people, but not working for Americans. We already barely have any representation here, but like it just seems like it's got to a level now where everyone knows it's bullshit and they just don't fucking care anymore. They just do what they want. Like Obama, he's the first president ever to not get permission to bomb another country. First president ever. It just goes on and on and on. I just wanted to give some examples of. Here's the thing about CIA drug running. Let me read this one. This is fucking hilarious. Or not hilarious, but it's very sad. Pulitzer Prize award-winning journalist Gray Webb exposed this alongside LAPD narcotics officer turned whistleblower as author Michael Rupert, CIA contract pilot Terry Reed, and many others in August '96. The San Jose Mercury News published Webb's Dark Alliance, a 20,000-word, 3-part investigation series which alleged that the Nicaraguan drug traffickers had sold and distributed crack cocaine in Los Angeles during the 1980s, and that the drug profits were used to fund CIA-supported Nicaraguan Contras. Webb never asserted that the CIA directly aided drug dealers to raise money for the Contras, but he did document that the CIA was aware of the cocaine transactions and the large shipments of cocaine into the U.S. Aware? Yeah, their planes were doing it by the Contra personnel. Dark Alliances received national attention at the height of the interest. The web version of it on San Jose Mercury News received 1.3 million hits a day. Jesus. According to the Columbia Journalism Review, the series became the most talked about piece of journalism in '96 and arguably the most famous, some would say infamous, set of articles of the decade. Gulf of Tonkin never happened. The Gulf of Tonkin incident is the name given to 2 separate incidents involving the Democratic Republic of Vietnam and the United States in the waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. 2 American destroyers engaged 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats, resulting in the sinking of one of the torpedo boats. This was also the single most important reason for the escalation of the Vietnam War. So it looks sort of like these false flag things have been happening for a long time. Like they want to dredge up support in the American population for the war. Just do something and claim that a bunch of Americans died or make a bunch of Americans die. I mean, there's a famous story. I always hear Joe Rogan talking about this where They were going to blow up, I think it was a regular airline flight, just full of, a couple hundred American people or whatever, just to start a war. I think it was with Cuba back in the day. And so, it's nothing new, man. It's really sad. I don't know what we should do. I don't know what the answer is. But I'm hoping that if we get the information out there and we expose what propaganda is and what conspiracies are, and we teach each other to the best of our capability how to sift through this information and arrive at a mutually beneficial answer as best we can, with as close to the truth as we can possibly manage, with hopefully all facts considered. I don't know of any other way, but knowledge is power. And I feel that sharing this knowledge with you, and you guys hopefully sharing knowledge with me, and hopefully we can make changes for the better. That's about all I have to say on this subject. Thank you for anyone that gives a shit. To everyone who gives a fuck, I love you. And to everyone that don't, eat a bag of dicks. Until next time, Socrates. Peace.